Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. Today I'm going to be reviewing Boosh, The Colors in the Steel by K.J. Parker. This is book one of the Fencer trilogy. So I have no control over a toddler, or he's not a toddler yet, I guess. Anyway, 9-month-old. He is over here in the corner in his little chair, chewing on something. So if you hear there aren't like magic gnomes in here. It's not just you, so you're not going crazy. But he is over here and, may have something to say. And you know what? He's probably right. So just if you hear him, or if you hear rattle, that's him chewing on his toy. So at any rate, yes, so this is book one of the Fencer trilogy. And the Fencer trilogy is K.J. Parker's first novel as K.J. Parker. Tom Holt writes completely different style novels. They're much more humorous. And less kind of like a dark fantasy or like gritty realism fantasy or whatever this is, like how to DIY fantasy. But this is his first trilogy and therefore his first book as K.J. Parker. And you can definitely tell that this is Parker's first work. But having read all of the standalones and all of the short story works and all the novellas out, I decided I wanted to start over with his trilogies. Even after having read two of his trilogies, I wanted to do another Parker read along. Really, I know, right? And so we started we read the Engineer trilogy last year, October, November, December. And so I'm like, let's just read another Parker trilogy, October, November, December. And this is the first Parker I've read all year. So I can't go a year without reading Parker for sure. So let's talk about it. Without wasting more time. Let's get down to business. This is my impressions of the Fencer trilogy. So is this a good starting place for K.J. Parker? And no, I don't actually think this is a really good place to begin with K.J. Parker. And I'll get all into that. But the Fencer trilogy, or Colors in the Steel, is ostensibly, it is about a fencer at law. And this is, the premise is really cool. Bardus Lorden is a former soldier who is a fencer at law, which means that he settles disputes via fencing. Certain crimes are settled if they're not arbitrated out of court. They are settled by fencing, meaning the best fencer wins and the opponent generally dies. There are some things that are fought to first blood or a point system, I guess, but most of the ones that Bardus does are settled to the death, basically. So whoever is the best fencer wins, and he doesn't really take any pleasure in it. It's just something that he does. He is a former soldier, just kind of listless, drifting through life. He's one of the best fencers at law, but he, again, doesn't derive any pleasure from either the work or the killing. He didn't really even derive pleasure when he was a soldier. He is just a former farm boy who ran away to join the military and rose up to the ranks with his uncle Maxon, who became famous for destroying the Plains tribes that are near the city of Perimadeia. You all right, bud? He's having a grand old time over here. He apparently loves this book. So, Perimadeia. It ain't no Perimadeia. Perimadeia or Perimadeia, whatever. Perimadeia, the triple city they call it, because there's three layers of it. One on the harbor, and then one slightly above, and then the rich people live in the Citadel area. But Bardus's uncle Maxon drove away the Plains tribes. They weren't really, attacking the city, but they were near the city, and no one can really have that. You gotta push those barbarian tribes away. And this is something that Parker deals with a lot, the idea of the savage and the barbarian versus the civilized and, the urban. And so Bardus Lorden is one of two main POVs in this story. This story is really about Bardus and his counterpart, Timri, who is the now chieftain of the Plains tribes. At the beginning, in the very first chapter, we see Timri coming into the city to learn how to smith, and they, just let him in. He's a barbarian plainsman, but they're like, okay, you come to the city, you want to learn a trade, here you go. And they teach him how to smith, and he's, looking at all these things, and is just wondering, why, when he is one of the Plains tribes, they just let him in, and they teach him how to do all this stuff. And no one really cares, because, they'll sit there and tell you how to do stuff. You just got to listen and pay attention, because they don't really hate the Plains people. It's just your tribe can't stay super close to the city because then it's dangerous or whatever. And so he is the son of the current chieftain, and then he has to very quickly become the new chieftain, and his whole goal is revenge on Bardus Lordan, because General Maxon is dead, but Bardus Lordan is still here, and it's not just Lordan. Lordan is the proxy, but really the city has to pay because they're the ones who sent Maxon and his dragoons to wipe out large chunks of Timrai's tribe. So he is determined to bring down the city, to lay siege to it, and burn it to the ground. And so we have, Bardus, ex-soldier, who does not want the city to burn to the ground, and Timrai, the plainsman who has learned many of the city's trades, now leading his tribes, who definitely wants the city to burn down and, take revenge for the crimes done to his tribe. There is a tertiary kind of storyline that deals with the principle, which is the magic in this world, and just so you're aware, there's more magic in this particular Parker book than there is in really any other Parker book that I've read. The magic is kind of front and center, and it is irritating because Parker, in all the short stories, that's really where the magic appears the most, is in the short stories and the novellas, and it is never clear. It is always this very nebulous, kind of abstract, mind over matter, picture a door type thing, and it is no clearer here in this book. And that is why this child. What are you doing? What are you doing? And the magic is pretty front and center here, and it is equally obtuse. It is actually really difficult to figure out what its purpose is. It's very abstract, what it does, why certain things are happening. And that is annoying, and actually was one of the primary detractors of this particular book for me. And those sections deal with the head of the academy or priesthood or university, whatever. He's like the head priest / wizard, Alexius, and his friend like Ganadrius, who is and it's just them trying to deal with curses and whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to be talking largely about their stuff because I did not think it was super relevant to this particular book. So it's mostly this is mostly going to talk about Bardus and Timrai. All right, time to lay the baby down for a nap. There we go. You want to stay here while Daddy talks about this book? Maybe. All right, I'll talk about this book for a second. Put your arm up. There we go. Take it. There you go. And so it's obvious that this is Parker's first book because many of the core things that Parker talks about, like the way he talks about things, the themes that he hits, many of those things are present here. And part of what makes this book a little messy for me is that it's all there. Like, there's a whole lot happening here, and there's a bunch that doesn't get resolved in this book. So it's hard to understand why everything is there. As Evie put it when we were reading it, if she did not already know Parker and trust that it's all going somewhere, it would be harder to affect that and believe that. And because we know Parker, having read so much Parker, like, we understand that, sometimes you just don't know what the frick's going on right now, and hopefully the payoff's going to be there. And Parker almost always delivers. But not having read Parker before, it will be hard, I think, reading this to really believe that he knows, like, where he's going, and that this isn't just like scattershot stream of consciousness. Like, let's write a vignette here of some people, painting a sign or whatever. So you have themes of revenge, themes about human nature, themes about loyalty, which I'll get into later. Certainly themes exploring civilized versus savage. You have the construction of things, the very, very in-depth logistical work, or how to, do some trade, or how to build something. In this particular one, it is learning how to smith, which we also see in the engineer and the hammer some, and then learning how to build a siege engine. Do you want to know how to build a frickin' trebuchet? Because he's going to tell you exactly how to build a trebuchet / siege engine / catapult, whatever. He's going to go through. I know. I know he's going to go through exactly how to, like, where to put every screw. It is, and I usually really, really enjoy these little like diversions, like how to make arrows and military, supply lines and logistics and banking, or manufacturing or fencing, any of those things. The siege engine, it was just too much for me. I don't know if it was just written more dryly because it's his first book, or if I just care less about siege engines construction. But that part was not that that part was not really my favorite. So take that for what it's worth. You either like those things in Parker or you don't. If you normally if you normally like them, you just kind of brush past them. If it's just a trademark of Parker, if you don't like it, you just kind of skim past it because you're not really missing anything during that. But what I like so much about Parker is always adept at talking about logistics and how to prepare for a war, how to keep a city thriving, or whatever. But here he does a really great job in this book of turning kind of humanity and a city itself into a supply. Like everything is one great machine, and we'll see more of this kind of like thought processes in the engineering trilogy. Yeah, and so Parker is just like with his logistical details. He's great at showing like the macro of like a city's economy and how it again is part of a larger machine. All these people, all these things, and everything a part of the whole, all useless and unable to function without a score of other trades and tradesmen, all of them similarly dependent on the union and fusion of many parts. As he sat and watched, Loridan had an uncomfortable feeling of being the only thing in the city that wasn't a component, a dedicated part of something else. And so every single part of the city, every single thing that occurs, every transaction, even ones you wouldn't think of, are part of this great machine that without it, the city does not run the way it needs to. And Parker is really one of the best in fantasy at showing the interconnectedness of seemingly disparate parts within a larger, mechanical structure. On each of these busy tradesmen depends another complex system. Wives and families to feed and clothe, children needing to be taught their proper skills, have husbands or apprenticeships found for them, rent to be paid, guild fees and licenses and taxes to be met, parents and parents-in-law to be supported in their declining years, burial clubs and friendly societies to be given their dues. By these subsystems, each component is locked into the whole so fast that he dare not stir out of his place, so that every part of the machine needs to run smoothly for fear of destroying everything. Curious to think that in other parts of the world, people somehow managed to live without all this. They were, of course, savages, little better than beasts, creatures who never in all their lives had their portraits painted or took a case to the courts of law, which was why they had to be kept back where they belonged, out of sight of the walls and gates of the Triple City, just in case a busy man on his way to work in the morning might chance to see them and wonder just why in hell he bothered. So this is, again, another thing that I love about Parker is just that this kind of cynical, tongue-in-cheek writing style that all of these things are dependent and everything is so just like intricate and without anything, it falls apart and no one stops to wonder why all this has to be this way other than the fact this is how it's done and this is how civilized people do it. And the only people that don't do it are savages because if they were civilized, they'd do it like we do. But we're not so sure that this is the way it needs to be that we need to keep the savages who don't do it away from the city so that our guys don't ask too many questions and wonder why are we doing it when these people aren't doing it. They seem to get along just fine. And that's just one of the things I love about Parker. Now, as for Temrai enters the city initially to gain information about how to bring it down and about how to create their siege weapons and how to forge superior weapons from city plans. But even this short time, I think it's less than a year, it's like a number of months. Even the short time in the city changes Temrai. And far be it from me to ever talk about Plato's allegory of the cave, but once he has been in the city and exposed himself to these people and their way of life, he sees, he can't go back. He can't not now have these comforts that he had in the city that his people do not have and know all this advanced technological knowledge that he did not know before that they have that would better the lives of his people. And it's like a contagion. He didn't intend for that to happen, but it just did. And he doesn't he actually likes the people in the city. Like, the people in the city didn't do anything to him. It's just the city itself he has to destroy. And so Timrai has to deal with this kind of this inner conflict of taking down a city that he likes. Like, he likes the city and the comforts and the technology and the advanced knowledge and the trappings of civilization, and yet he has to take his revenge on it because of what the city has wrought upon his people. And I really like that he has that conflict, that he's not just like, oh yeah, the city's gotta burn. He does wrestle with it, despite the fact that he's, decides he has to bring the stupid thing down. And he wrestles with bringing these kind of advancements to his people, like knowing that that's there and then not doing it, he thinks is stupid. And so he also considers himself kind of above the rest of his tribe now. He can't view them in the same way. He views them kind of as savages, even though he is the king of the savages. Probably the thing I like the best about this book is, like, exploration of warfare. Parker does this in a lot of books, and he's not the only one that does it, but I like military fantasy, and I like the themes in war that are to be explored. And there's this really, really brilliant section, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing out, but there's a really this big page of kind of a really realistic description of that someone is giving of what war is like. Someone who hasn't been in war is like, hey, what's war like? And there's this really realistic description that is not in any way glamorous. Talks about how battles are, it's 15% of it is luck, 5% is the generals, and none of it is deliberate. Nothing that happens in a battle is deliberate. And in fact, it's just a scrum where everyone's terrified. Like, you think, like, they all have the Dunning-Kruger effect, where they all think they're going to be better in it than they are, but everyone forgets their training because everyone's scared. It's not one-on-one duels like the way epic poems like the Iliad portray. No, it's just this vast melee. The blow that kills you, you're probably not even going to see. It's just going to come from some dude like behind you or next to you while you're trying to mess with this guy in front of you. And it's just a really kind of like boots on the ground description. Not at all what we generally see battles kind of described as. Another quote: "To die for one's people is bad enough. To die for one's people and lose as well must be a dreadful thing." I don't know if it says it, but I wrote it down because I like it. This is something that's explored a lot. I talked about this very thing in my Scarab Path review, the dehumanization of war. In this, Parker talks about how just the language that people use to make war palatable, like euphemisms, instead of people being blown apart or killed or murdered or whatever, they become casualties or acceptable losses or expendable forces. All of this dehumanizing language, because you can't think about someone being ripped apart or blown apart by a cannon or burned alive. You just kind of make it this general term dealing with warfare so that you can carry on and not think too much about the men that you're sending to their deaths. And on that, in that topic of warfare, there's a lot of discussion in this book about people as weapons. About, just like a weapon, people can be molded and wielded for good purposes or evil purposes, especially these people who kind of exist solely to inflict violence on others. Parker, it just assumes that the kind of people that he's talking about, these people who just exude this kind of raw violence, and how those people can be honed and wielded for either side, kind of channeling that violent energy toward a goal and co-opted for the military. These people, like Bardus. Bardus is treated as one of these people. They can be given a cause to fight for that isn't their own. Like when Bardus was with his uncle Maxon, like, the cause of the city was not really his. He's just kind of looking for a purpose. But they can co-opt that cause and kind of internalize it and become that weapon. Just like in the law courts, he becomes the cause of justice, as he is the fencing blade that dispenses justice. "And a sword cuts skin and flesh for the man who swings it, and a man is a sword in the hand of his own circumstances. The things that have happened in the past that have made him what he is, and their consequences in the present that he must address and deal with. The same is true of the lawyer, the man who fights and kills for a cause not his own in the name of justice. The weapon in his hand and the skill of that hand imparts to the weapon decide right and wrong, good and evil. but the stronger and quicker on the day prevail over the slower and weaker. And if a moment before the fight the defendant had taken over the plaintiff's brief and vice versa, it's hard to believe the outcome would be different. I just love the way Parker writes and these concepts that he's exploring. You guys know that I always love themes of loyalty and explorations of that and what that means. Loyalty to one's city, to one's country, to one's tribe, to family, to friends and other relationships. Themes of service and honor. A lot of times service does not get enough exploration in fantasy. I guess it becomes duty, but so I always really like when duty is being explored and what people that do the duty they're supposed to do or serve as they're supposed to serve. One of the characters says, service is what makes you stand in the line when nobody would try and stop you if you ran away. And honor is what's left when every other conceivable reason for staying there has long since evaporated. I always like how Parker really does humanize while dehumanizing the concept of war. No one has these grand ideals. I mean, the fools do. But everyone is always scared in Parker's conflicts. They're always aware that they can die at any second, and have kind of resigned themselves to, well, I guess this is going to be the time that I die, and they just kind of go out of their bodies and fight and try to survive. There is nothing glorious about the conquest and the war in Parker's books. And the fact that he talks about service and honor at all in a Parker book is kind of unique to this book, because Parker's protagonists tend not to believe very much in causes and honor and doing one's duty, and the ones that do are usually the tragic ones. And so in this revenge tale, because there's more than just the Timrai stuff, but I'm not going to talk about all that, but Timrai, 100% wants revenge on the city. And like I said before, I like how Parker explores how everything kind of fits together, and that one thing that doesn't seem related leads to another thing. And that's really what Parker explores here, is this desire for revenge and the chain of events that kind of sets off. And so the result of it, you can't possibly see coming, because you can't see that all of these pieces in this Rube Goldberg machine are going to lead to this place. The consequences for reaching for that, and everybody who is hurt along the way, like the just the ripple effects that go outward as these people look for revenge. And I think it's like that in our lives. Like, it's impossible to see how this is going to play out if we continue down this destructive line of taking our vengeance. Like, who is going to get mowed down in the process, and how is it going to negatively affect their lives? It's not just about you and that person. It affects other people along the way like a wave. And because of that, the best part of this book, my favorite part, is the push and pull kind of between Lorredin and Timrai, and just the siege of the city, and how it goes back and forth, the politics. And this is something that Parker is always good at, the politics and bureaucracy that affect things that normally aren't affected by politics and bureaucracy. How much politics and bureaucracy and the appearance of things, how, and what factions in charge, how all of that affects the business of waging war. That's just not really explored a lot in fantasy, and certainly not epic fantasy. And I understand why. Who wants to read about factionalism and, we got to pull those guys back there. No, we're not going to reinforce. We're not going to supply you with this because this faction is ascendant and this one's going down, and so-and-so made so-and-so mad, so we're going to withdraw our support. Like, in most stories it slows it down, but Parker tells the kind of stories that are absolutely enriched by this. Same thing in the Engineering trilogy. This is just the kind of stuff that Parker does so well and makes it so, just so different than any other fantasy writer today. Now, Parker does use a lot of the Parker does use a lot of the same themes. He realized after recording this without his mic plugged in, so that's going to be fun. Hopefully you guys are able to hear me from way over here, but probably not. I'm probably going to have to re-record this whole thing, which fills me with rage. But again, this wasn't my favorite. This was my favorite Parker book. It just having read a bunch of it, it was just messy. I like this book better in retrospective. Now that I've read book 2, a lot of my problems and questions and things are kind of like resolved or answered, or at least have fallen into place more having read book 2. Otherwise, this was probably my least favorite of the Parker novels I think, other than Sharps. But again, if you are a Parker fan, you absolutely should read this. If you are not yet a Parker fan, this shouldn't be your first bite at the apple. Read Folding Knife, read Savages, read Purple and Black, read Silas Korax even. I think is a better entry point. But I really enjoyed this book, and I enjoyed book 2, I think, even more. I give this book 4 trebuchets, 2 siege towers, and 1 lowered drawbridge. So, have you read the Fencer trilogy? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy like the later books more than book 1? Anyway, I'm gonna try to salvage this. Probably gonna have to re-record the whole thing. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description, and I'll see you next time, guys.